What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing people who seem to have been deleted from reality. This is sort of along the lines of the glitch in the matrix type theory dealy thing. As most of you already know by now, I almost exclusively, at least in some of the areas of my career, research and write about people who seem to vanish into thin air or come right back from having vanished. Sometimes, though, it's much stranger than that, and it's like people have literally stepped off the planet, or like they were never here to begin with. I am a firm and true believer that many of these people end up in portals, but recently another theory as to what happens to them has been brought to my attention, and that's that they were deleted from reality altogether. Like, we live in a simulation, and the powers that be just poofed them out. It's not like the people we're going to be discussing here today merely wandered off and got lost. And in fact, it's more like they disappeared in the blink of an eye, in a moment's notice, and sometimes even right in front of witnesses. I know we recently covered instances like these, at least somewhat, in the video I did about the Alaska and Bennington triangles. So most of you who watch that video and or who have been at least somewhat following my career, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And even for those of you who have no idea, I'll say that if you find strange missing persons cases interesting, stay tuned, because these ones are some of, if not the most strangest ones I've ever come across, and that's really saying something, trust me. Let's jump right in. Our first encounter comes from someone I'll just call Bob when he was exploring a wilderness area not too far outside of Tokyo, Japan, sometime in the summer of 2013. While the area itself was located in a remote spot, it held a lot of activities for families and lone explorers alike, and so this was in no way a case of Bob being out in some remote wilderness area somewhere all alone. In fact, he said there were tons of people around all over the place, which is what makes his story perfect for what we are discussing here today. Many people were camping in the area at the time, but Bob was only there for a day hike. He was with several other people who were picnicking and barbecuing, and there were tons of tables filled with other families who were doing the exact same thing. These areas were specifically set up for those types of activities, not to mention the aforementioned camping and a bunch of other fun things to do there. Bob said the area was so filled with other people that he and his companions had commented several times about how crowded the place was. Bob said he remembers that he was thinking it was a sort of dangerous area for family events and for little kids especially to be running around, because there was a very steep drop-off at the end of a creek that ran right through the area. He and his friends were sitting almost on top of that drop-off, according to Bob, and he said he couldn't really enjoy his lunch or his time there in that beautiful area because he was so overwhelmed with worry that a little kid or someone else was going to not be paying attention and just run right off the cliff. He said that it was nerve-wracking, and he and his friends planned on mentioning it to the officials who ran the park and who held the events there. Once he and his friends finished their lunch and were about to pack up and head away from the area for the day, Bob was walking along the ridge and thinking about how there needed to be a railing there or something else to stop people from going over. I believe, in my opinion, something was actually compelling him to remain so laser focused on this. To others, it would have been a passing thought, but from how he describes it, to him, it was all-consuming, and that's not really normal, at least not in my opinion. This was more than likely Bob's reptile brain keeping him in a state of hyper-awareness for what was about to happen next. Considering Bob is someone who writes about the paranormal and supernatural as much, or maybe even more so than I do, I'm confident that that's what was happening. He was just very alert because energetically he could probably feel something strange in the air. He turned from the edge of the cliff and started walking back to his friends so they could leave and he could help them pack everything up. He said a little girl of about 8 years old went running by him, laughing and giggling, just having a good time, but not really paying attention. He watched as she ran right towards the edge of the cliff. There were kids everywhere, but Bob was making sure to keep an eye on this girl while also trying to figure out which one were her parents so he could warn them that they needed to watch her more closely. He was wondering why they weren't watching her to begin with, as the drop-off was in a very obvious spot and it wasn't like it was hidden from view and people there weren't aware that it was there or something. Everyone in the area would have been able to see it and know that it was there and that it was very, very dangerous. He walked back over to the cliff, being compelled to keep an eye on the little girl, but still figuring her parents were going to intervene at any moment. As she ran, bounding ever closer and at a faster and faster rate of speed towards the cliff, Bob yelled out in Japanese that she, quote, better be careful, end quote. I am not going to try to say that in Japanese. I did try, had to edit that out. He saw the little girl running straight towards the edge and all around the boulders in the area. He was also going around the boulders, only he was walking in order to keep a better eye on the little girl. However, once he came out from behind one of those boulders, the little girl was gone. She was nowhere to be seen. Considering the rate of speed at which the little girl had been running and her position when compared to Bob's, there was literally nowhere else she could have gone except over the edge of the cliff. However, when he panicked and ran to the edge in order to see if she had fallen and where she may have landed, the little girl was nowhere to be seen or found. It had only been a second, if that, so there was no way she could have fallen into the creek and gotten quickly swept away, and there was also no way she could have survived going over. But even if she had done that, she couldn't have gone anywhere where Bob couldn't see her from where he was standing in a matter of that second or two. It was all impossible, and Bob was panic-stricken, but also he was incredibly confused. He looked back towards the meadow in the hopes that she had simply turned around, but she wasn't anywhere behind the creek and drop-off either. It was like she was either never there at all, or that she had simply just ceased to exist anymore in the second he had crossed behind the boulder. Bob really had no way of determining who the little girl's parents were, so he basically chalked it up to having a perfectly reasonable and rational explanation, but that it was perhaps an explanation he couldn't quite think of yet. Due to the fact that he is an investigative journalist into all things paranormal, and especially into the vanished and the missing, yes, that's why I'm calling him Bob. That fact shocked me, but that's what the man said in his own words, so I have no choice but to believe he was just ready to let it go without trying to come up with some sort of explanation for it all. But that's what happened, to be sure. He said, though he knew it was impossible, he told himself that in that fraction of a second his eyes hadn't been on her. She had somehow changed course, turned around, ran all the way back to her parents, wherever they were, and managed to blend in so well that he no longer saw her, despite him being able to pick out every other kid that had been there the whole time. So he was like counting little kid heads, like, no, I remember that kid, I remember that. Where is she? Bob and his friends stayed there a little while longer, but there was never anyone who was in a panic or like looking for a lost child. He let it go, but that same night it came back to him and he finally realized he had witnessed something supernatural. It finally dawned on him. I mean, we don't normally go right to thinking the most out there and paranormal, supernatural thing possible as the first explanation for something, even if it seems incredibly strange and unlikely that it was something normal or to be concerned with. I know I don't, and everything I see and sense on a daily basis, if I don't think that way, then I fully believe most other people don't either. Bob said he became obsessed with figuring out what happened and even continuously checked the news for either a report of a missing girl from the area fitting that description, or perhaps even the tragic death of a little girl who had gone over the cliff. However, there was nothing at all, and to this day he ruminates over what he saw and cannot figure it out. He is adamant that there is no way the little girl could have gotten out of his sight in a nanosecond without having gone over that cliff. There's no evidence she did, though, and surely, if nothing else, he would have seen or read about it on the news, especially with how obsessively and compulsively he was watching. He ponders often whether or not he saw a ghost, or if there's some family out there somewhere who lost their little girl and never found out what happened to her, but who also, for whatever reason, never reported it to the authorities. Maybe it was a case of the recreational area suppressing the story and someone did come forward and report the little girl as missing. Otherwise, it could very well have been a case of someone simply ceasing to exist. I wonder about that too, though, because I think she would have still had to have belonged to someone who would have definitely, at least eventually, noticed that she was missing. Or does it work like once someone is erased, for whatever reason, the memories others hold of them are erased as well? That really terrifies me and creeps me out. I tend to think it's the latter option, believe it or not, and I have my own reasons for thinking that way. I'll ask you all, though, do you even understand the implications of such things? How many people could be missing from your own life that you aren't even aware of because of who or whatever is responsible for creating the matrix we allegedly live in? And I'm not saying I believe that's what this one was one way or another, but that's what it would have to be for this theory to make any sense. If the creators of the alleged matrix just decided to off them for fun or for whatever reason, it really kind of makes you think though, doesn't it? Let me know what you all think in the comments below, please, as always. Oh, and it turns out that our friend Bob only got into investigating mysterious disappearances because of what happened to him in this encounter. Well, considering he's one of my all-time favorites and I look up to him very, very much, I have to thank who or whatever is responsible for leading him down this path. Who knows, maybe that's exactly why he experienced what he did that day so long ago in the first place. I guess we'll never really know, and there are just so many questions. Bob scoured the internet and put his feelers out to see if he could find other people who have experienced the same thing that he did that day, and the response was overwhelming and very, very interesting. I certainly believe it's one of the most interesting phenomenons out there right now and has been for a while, which is why I cover it whenever I have enough cases to make into one video. Things like this, things like glitches in the matrix. According to a report I found on Reddit, a woman had her experience when she was eating at a Wendy's with her fiance. For those of you that don't know, Wendy's is a fast food place like McDonald's or Burger King, only in my opinion, way better. She said that at one point during the meal, a woman not only appeared out of nowhere, but she also disappeared right back into it, and that her fiance saw it too. She said of what happened, quote, "This is where it gets important. I was sitting with my back facing the side the register was on, meaning the entrance of the Wendy's was on my right side. I could see anyone who comes in and out by simply turning my head point of view slightly to the right. The entrance consists of the door, which leads to a small manhole, and to go out to the parking lot, you need to make a quick left turn where you immediately reach the door. You can't go straight in the manhole because right in front of the door you just walked out from is a ceiling-to-floor window looking out to the parking lot. When you step outside of the door to the parking lot, immediately there's a fence on the right side, meaning you need to continue walking straight and around the fence as you're trying to reach the right side of the parking lot. Also, if anyone walks out of the restaurant door to the parking lot and walks straight, I'd be able to see them through the windows along the side of the building after the entranceway. There are no other entrances or exits." I find that hard to believe because I think there does have to be two, but okay. Now that we have those details, we were eating and enjoying our meal when all of a sudden we saw a lady we knew didn't make any orders because we'd been people watching the line and she was never online and she wasn't there with anyone else either. This woman was wearing a pastel blue button-down shirt, white capris, and tennis shoes. She walked from the middle of the restaurant where they keep the sauces and napkins to the bathroom, which is behind the table we're sitting at, and comes out about 2 to 3 minutes later, but this time with a Wendy's drink in her hand. She made her way around the current line at the register, and right before she reached the exit, she slightly turned back and looked at us. She opened the first door and continued walking straight. Then she was gone. My fiance and I looked at each other at that exact moment and looked back to the door and started questioning out loud if we both saw the same thing we thought we had just seen. He said he saw it too. He immediately got up from our table and ran to the exit door and out to the parking lot and said she was absolutely nowhere to be found. We didn't see where she went when she walked into the window. We didn't see her on the other side of the window walking through the parking lot. We didn't see her opening the second door to the parking lot and walking straight. We literally saw her walk into the window. We continued discussing it and both made the point about the window being there and how it's not possible for her to walk through it and exit. We also discussed how she literally appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the restaurant. We discussed how she literally glanced over at us before she left the restaurant. To this day, we don't know what happened to her, how she appeared in the restaurant, or even how she left the restaurant at all. We sort of joked that she was a time traveler, but I really have no idea what to make of the situation, end quote. Time traveler, indeed. And stranger things have actually happened, as most of us well know. I've seen this happen so many times I've actually lost count, but in my case, it's almost exclusively because I see ghosts. I mean, that's almost always a viable explanation for these types of things. Not 100% of the time, but most of the time anyway, it's a spirit. I often wonder if more and more people these days are momentarily connecting with the so-called other side or instantaneously timeline jumping, but only for that single moment. That could mean, take this case for instance as an example, that somewhere in an alternate dimension or reality, there's a woman who saw two people at a table disappear right before her eyes as she exited a Wendy's restaurant with her soda or whatever it was in the cup, and she's wondering how in the world to make sense of it all. Could it be the Reddit user and her fiance were both imagining the same thing? Was it a sort of shared hallucination, if you will? I find that, out of all of the possible explanations, even the most mundane, that's the least likely scenario of what could have happened here. Seriously. Our next witness says an elderly man with a cane not only disappeared twice, but also reappeared as well. Let's just hear what they had to say about the strange experience. Quote, "We stopped at a rest area somewhere in Alabama to let our dogs out and to head to the bathroom ourselves, and I was left in charge of the dogs while everyone else went in. So when my turn came around, I walked/ran in pretty fast. This is when I first spotted the disappearing man. He was this older guy with a cane, and the only reason I noticed him was because of the bright green jacket he had on. Well, I walked past him while he was on the bench, and I had turned around because the green caught my eye, but he was gone. Sure, he could have gotten up fast. Maybe he was just a fast old dude. I don't know. So I headed in and used the bathroom. So when I finished in the bathroom, I was walking out and I saw the same guy walking in front of me out the doors. I looked down at my phone, and when I look up, the guy is gone. I sped up and looked out the doors left and right to see if I could spot him, but he was completely gone out of nowhere. It was one of the weirdest experiences I've had, really. It may not seem like much, but it was quite odd." End quote. This one to me seems like it's more spectral than anything else, but honestly, there's really no way of knowing for sure, and it definitely was creepy nonetheless. Our next one also comes from Reddit, and it's a person who says that someone walking next to him on the street simply ceased to be there anymore in the literal blink of an eye. They reported, quote, "I went out for a walk to do my regular poop, and there was this person in all black with his head covered with a hoodie. He was walking perpendicular right across from me on the other sidewalk. I glanced once at the guy and didn't think anything of it. Then I looked back and there wasn't anybody where he should have been. All I could think was, holy F word. To further elaborate, no way in heck could he be literally anywhere. He was walking right next to an empty parking lot. At first, I thought he might have crossed and was behind me, but no. This isn't my first time experiencing a glitch or whatever you'd want to call it either." End quote. I think he or she is more likely telling the truth about that last part too, and here's why. Once you experience something like this, call it a glitch in the matrix for the sake of this video, you are more likely to continue to experience such things because with the first event, your mind is opened and made more aware that these types of things happen, again, regardless of whatever it is you want to label them as. Do you all agree with that? What are your thoughts so far? Things like this can leave a person very confused and in a heightened state of awareness for a long time after the event had happened. It's disorientating and mind-numbing because it doesn't fit with what we know about the universe as human beings. Our next witness said about his experience, quote, "Okay, so one late evening I was walking down the sidewalk, minding my own business, listening to some tunes in my headphones. It had rained a bit that day, so there were a lot of puddles. Walking in front of me was a man, nothing unusual, just a man. I remember how he was dressed, straight jeans, slightly wet near the heels, a short, puffed-down jacket, and a backpack, specifically Columbia. I was kind of in my own headspace, walking and staring at the said Columbia tag. After a few moments of walking, I had to step over a puddle. I looked down at it, overstepped it, looked back up, and the man had vanished. Yes, I know what you're thinking about. He could have turned, but the same thing crossed my mind at the same second I didn't see him in front of me anymore. Here's why everything that explains it doesn't work. To our left is a small field with a couple of benches, no trees, lots of lights. To our right was a 4-lane road with lots of light. It was late, so me and the man were the only ones walking and he had nowhere to hide. Why would you want to hide in the first place? And if he ran across the road, I would have seen him do that." End quote. I find the explanations interesting as well because it proves when I always say it, that human beings, whether they realize it or not, will try to convince themselves of literally anything in order to avoid having to face the facts that they may have just encountered something that isn't easily explained or explained at all according to and by what we know to be our own physical laws. someone disappearing right before your eyes in the blink of an eye does not align with physics, right? At least it doesn't align with physics. There's another witness I came across who claims they just saw a boy vanish into thin air. They stated, quote, "I was going out with my friends and we were taking the apples from a random tree back in time there. As we were collecting them, we saw the boy who walked with our path forward." It's a little confusing. "He looked like a 12-year-old. He wasn't looking at his phone or anything. He just walked. We didn't give it too much attention and continued on with the apples. After around 5 or 10 seconds, we noticed he was gone. We looked at the way that guy was walking and he wasn't anywhere near us. We would have seen him going far away, but no, he disappeared into nowhere. I thought he turned and went a random other way quickly, but it turned out that there was only one path there. He didn't even look at us while going, although there were 3 of us and we all saw him, me and my friends. We still find it weird and random how he just appeared and disappeared out of nowhere. The place we were at was actually empty and abandoned. We just decided to go that way. It was a random way away from our street," end quote. That one, I couldn't edit it because it was a quote, but basically he and his friends were apple picking on some abandoned property and they looked over and saw the kid, looked away, looked over, he was gone, nowhere for him to go. It's the same over and over again, but it just shows it's happening to so many people. In another encounter I found on Reddit, a person who says they are a complete and total skeptic when it comes to all things paranormal and supernatural, and that they never even believed in such things, thinking instead that there must always be some sort of reasonable and rational explanation for all of it. That was until they came across their own vanishing human and saw it with their own 2 eyes. They couldn't explain it and stated, quote, "I've lived in the same city my entire life in the USA, and there was a Circle K convenience store very close to where I lived. At the time, I knew the same 4 or 5 employees in the store. The store only has one entrance, which also serves as the exit, and the parking lot in front of the store is the only parking lot. The store also only has one bathroom, which is designed for one person at a time. Back in March of 2011, I drove to the Circle K, and right about the same time, this white car next to me pulled up. I'm not quite sure what kind of car it was, but it was quite a beater, to say the least." He means a hoopty. "Right when I was getting out of the car, the woman driving the white car had gotten out of it. She walked in the Circle K. I took some time to empty out some trash from my car, and I entered the store about a minute later. Keep in mind, this woman hadn't left the store yet, and there was only one entrance, which also served as the exit. Aside from the woman who worked there, I was the only one in the main part of the store, so I just assumed the woman I saw walking from the car was in the bathroom or something. I got my snacks and went up to the counter. I already knew the clerk well. We would open up to each other about many things, and I had to ask if a woman walked in and was possibly in the bathroom. I just thought it was odd that this woman was using the restroom for close to 10 minutes by this time. Anyway, I described what the woman looked like to the clerk. She was very pale, white, obviously, had black hair, brown eyes, she was medium height, and as soon as I mentioned her very low waist to hip ratio, she has an abnormally large butt and huge hips and thighs compared to her tiny little waist. The clerk gasped. She told me she knew exactly who I was talking about, and she also told me she was a regular customer, but what she said to me gives me chills to this day. She told me this woman hadn't entered the store on this day. I told her I saw her walk in right before I did, and she told me she was at the counter and never saw her. We were both baffled. I obviously wasn't just seeing things because the clerk told me I described a regular customer, and this was somebody I had never seen before. When I walked out of the Circle K, her car was still there, so I just sat in my car for 5 minutes but left because I didn't want to seem creepy. And I never found out if she came back to the car. The only thing I can think of is the woman from the car walking in the store was doing something shady in the bathroom, maybe drug dealing, doing drugs, etc., and was in cahoots with the clerk, and the clerk was playing dumb with me. Even though I knew the clerk, this doesn't mean she didn't have any secrets she wouldn't tell me. Other than that, I don't know. She disappeared into thin air, end quote. First of all, who's drug dealing in a bathroom? He said he was the only one in the store. So who's she dealing to? Maybe the clerk? I don't know. That really gets under my skin. It's always about addicts. It's always about drugs. Anyway, what do you guys make of this one? This one was particularly interesting to me because it was like, he described, like, it was like the person, he described an actual customer that the clerk knew who he was talking about. But he didn't say, like, I found out she died a month earlier. It was just like maybe he was seeing a few minutes ahead of everybody else. This one really baffled me, guys. And I'm sure if I sat and thought about it, I could come up with some sort of explanation. That would be maybe a big question mark, but it would definitely be something supernatural or paranormal. Also, first of all, that was a direct quote. So don't shoot the messenger about the strange and somewhat disrespectful way he described the alleged vanishing woman and how he referred to her body. Otherwise, this one also seems sort of spectral to me, and I wonder if that's just the explanation with most of these cases, and it shouldn't be called glitches in the matrix at all, but instead just normal people who saw something they weren't supposed to when they caught a glimpse of a spirit. I don't know, I'm kind of rethinking that now from when I wrote this about a week ago, because I feel like, you know, like residual hauntings, we talk about that a lot. I feel like this is like, he just saw something residual. I'm going to have to think about that one. I can't really say that though, because it could also be the aforementioned timeline jumping or timeline glimpsing that has become more common nowadays as well. Yes, believe me about that if you believe me about nothing else. More and more people are glimpsing other timelines, and the person or people whom they are glimpsing are also glimpsing them and going back to report about it wherever they're from as well. Can I prove it? No, of course not. But that doesn't mean it isn't real, and that doesn't mean it's not happening. You're just going to take my word for it or don't. It is what it is. So there's also a subcategory to all of this, the disappearing people glitching the matrix. And that's when somebody slowly fades retroactively or without anyone directly observing them doing so. For instance, we will go to our first witness who said that she was in college at the time and someone she and others knew fairly well, she thinks, just sort of ceased to exist one day without warning or explanation. This isn't the case of someone moving away and people forgetting about them either. Let's hear what the witness had to say about it, because it's really interesting, and this terrified me more than anything else. Quote, back in college, my friends and I would always all go to the cafeteria across campus together for lunch. There were about 8 to 10 of us on any given day, so normally you had 3 to 4 of us huddled, followed by the other 3 to 4. I was in the back group, and we passed between these 2 bushes. Then the weirdest feeling just kind of washed over me. Something felt changed, and I was a bit disoriented. We all kind of just stopped and looked at each other while the first group kept on going. Someone was missing. We all just kind of knew it. To this day, I have no idea who that was. Miss you, mysterious friend who vanished. It was a weird spot near those bushes in general. We always avoided it after that. I remember another time we all seemed to notice a light post there at the same time, and none of us could remember if it had always been there or not, even though we walked that path at least twice a day every day. Could probably just chalk it up to busy college students not paying attention, but it is weird that it's the same spot that we lost someone a few weeks later, end quote. In my experiences, these types of events happen far more often than the disappearing in front of witnesses do, believe it or not. It's just impossible to prove because by their very nature, encounters like these usually leave everyone not remembering. Maybe one day far into the future, they'll get a small glimpse or flash of memory, but then it's all gone and they're left feeling uncomfortable for seemingly no apparent reason. It's because they just remembered something supernatural and therefore, again, by its very nature isn't something that's normal or usual and easy to understand, break down, and or explain. What do you guys think about this one, about this type? Does it ring any bells? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you have your own experiences with the supernatural or paranormal, like this or otherwise, email it to me. I'd love to hear all about it. Here's another one that's very similar, and that it was someone the witness knew from college who he claims just kind of did a slow fade right out of existence. He said, quote, there was a guy that I went to school with that has now disappeared. I have the strongest memory of him hanging out with our whole group back in the early 2000s and then gone. He's not in any yearbooks. I haven't confused him with someone else. He's just gone. Here's the weird part. I don't live in a huge town, but the girl I know was his sister, and both of his parents still live here. She's on Facebook saying how grateful she is to her parents, that she has the life she does, only child, etc. I have known her literally my whole life. For the first 17 years, she had a brother. I have been tripping on this. Along with Nelson Mandela not dying in the 80s, this kid just disappears. And it's like my brain physically hurts when I try to recall the full memory of our last hangout too. I asked 2 of his friends what happened to him, and they said they never knew a guy with the name that I gave them. I asked if that family had a son. They say no, only the hot girl from school. I've never been so confused, end quote. Wow. Interesting mention of Mandela at the end there, huh? Could that be what all of this is about? The so-called Mandela effect. I am one of those people who remember being small, very small, and I remember where I was sitting, in which apartment we lived in, and what else I was watching on TV. I was eating a bowl of Captain Crunch cereal when they announced Nelson Mandela died. But I think I'm remembering it later than most people, but I do have that memory because I remember asking my father who Nelson Mandela was. So weird. What about you guys and the Mandela thing? Let me know. That just blew my mind because I've been thinking recently about covering that here on this channel at length and in depth, but I wasn't sure how you guys would like it, the Mandela effect. It looks like the universe has other plans though, so stay tuned for that real soon. Our next witness claims that not one, but several classmates just sort of faded out of existence over a period of time. He said about it all, quote, I was in my biology recitation class yesterday and I just read this life hacker article about being more observant before class. One of the things it talks about is counting the number of people in a room and marking exits in a room. So I thought it would be fun to do this silently to myself as class started. I counted 22 people, including the TA and myself, so 21 students, including me. This is a small classroom. The TA took an informal role by counting by 2s out loud. We have a sign-in sheet. He just wanted to know about how many people were missing, so no names needed. He got to 21, the same as me. He marked it on the sheet and then began talking about what we were going to be doing in class. He was going to take questions about the test. However, due to the way the professor, lecturer, not the TA, structured the test schedule, it was possible that some people had taken the test and others had not. He took a quick poll asking who had already taken the test. I had already taken the test, so I raised my hand, and he counted and said, all right, so a few of you have taken it out of 19. I was confused because I had just counted 21 students and heard him count 21 as well. He was noticeably confused and recounted. He got 19 students again. Then he asked, did a couple of y'all wander out when I wasn't paying attention? No one answered, and I knew no one had. I sat next to the door that day. It was weird. It was weirder because I would not have cared at all about the TA's counting mistake if I hadn't been observant and counted the people in the class myself. I've tried to think of an explanation, but I just can't. We both counted 21, and then suddenly there were 19. Yes, I recounted it too, in disbelief, end quote. I can already hear the comments from the trolls and skeptics alike in the comments telling me that maybe they should learn how to count better and or that they should go back to school. First of all, he was already in school. And secondly, could it all really possibly be that simple? Of course, and sometimes it really is, but not in every single case, assuming it's always some sort of human error. I don't think so, not by a long shot. Could we be living in a computer simulation? And if we are, then is all of this being done purposely by some cruel master who just likes to wipe people out in the most literal sense of the word? While I don't completely discount the computer-generated world/reality we live in theory, there would have to be so much more to it based on what I know by using and otherwise dealing with my abilities that I've had my entire life. But on the other hand, it could be said I was simply programmed to have them, and the entities I regularly speak to and commune with are all parts of that same coded program. It can become a very convoluted rabbit hole, and I will tell you that from experience. Let's look at one more case, which I think very much lends credence to the theory that people are experiencing other dimensions or alternate realities and timeline jumping, but only in the moment and for a very short period of time. And then you guys can let me know, as I've said before, in the comments, what you think the most viable theory as to what is happening here is. Our last example for this video read a book and then came up with a very interesting theory or idea. I'm not sure what to make of it all, but if I'm understanding it correctly, then it does lend a sort of sensibility to what I've been saying the whole time. Our theorist says, quote, okay, so I just finished reading a book called The 3 Waves of Volunteers and the New Earth by Dolores Cannon. In this book, great book by the way, It talks a lot about how we are starting to vibrate on a higher frequency, and one by one, people will sort of change dimensions from this to a higher one as they raise their vibration. In the beginning, it'll be people here and there, and it mentioned that these people who go will be a distant memory, and you sort of drift apart for no reason, and you won't find them. I wonder if this is really the case, and that's what's happened, end quote. I've talked about portals and the new earth in conjunction with the missing phenomenon at length and for a long time now, but I feel like I need to address it more than that, since most people aren't even aware that it's a topic I've covered at all. I have inside information, meaning information I've personally channeled, about what's happening to a lot of the people, especially but not only in the wilderness, who go missing in the blink of an eye while turning a bend, and with insight of numerous other people who all witnessed the exact same thing, that the individual was here one moment and poof, gone the next. I do plan on addressing that type of phenomenon and much more on the spirituality and channeling spectrum on this channel, and soon, mainly in the live streams. I've been waiting for the go-ahead not only from Spirit, but from you guys too, and it seems the vast majority of you are ready to hear it. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out with me, and if you enjoyed hanging out with each other if you were here in the premiere. Spread the love, please, by sharing this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure your notification bell is turned on. In the description box, you will find links for all of my books: Missing the Faith Theory, Encounters with Evil, 101 True and Terrifying Stories, and my most recent book that was released in November of 2022, Shadow Entities, Sleep Paralysis, and Beyond. I know a lot of you don't have that one. Go ahead and pick it up. It's available on Kindle Unlimited, and the paperback version, the links are in the description box. If you'd like to make a donation to the channel, PayPal, Cash App, Patreon. Okay, those links are in the description box as well, or my Amazon wish list gift link if you want to send me decks, crystals. I have all sorts of stuff on there. I even have like cases of water that I can't buy where I live. So if you just want to send me a little gift, a little thank you, or a little whatever, the link for the Amazon wish list is also down there as well. Also, information on things that I create myself, that I make, that I sell, okay, and personal readings, all right? For the entire month of May, I will be doing half price, meaning $20 personal readings. That's the general remote readings. Information on other types of readings that I do and pricing is in the description box, but you can always email me for any of that at GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. Email me for anything, any questions you may have, things like that. So if you pay through PayPal or Cash App $20 and just put reading or personal, in June, you will automatically receive the reading for that payment. Usually it's $40, but I'm running a special. What can I say? Every Wednesday night, you will find myself and Ghost Dragon ZW right here at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time with live intuitive oracle. I pull one random card from one random deck and tell you what your next week or two is going to have in store for it. It's a really great time. The people in there are so friendly. If you want to feel full of hope and like you belong and like you can really express yourself in a kind, safe, and loving manner and way, come on into that chat, even if you don't want a reading. Every other Thursday, it will be myself, Ghost Dragon ZW, and Paranormal Pixie for Chillax in Chat on the Thursdays in between. So the other Thursdays, you will see Paranormal Pixie, Miss Lara with Conversations with Lara, the Paranormal Pixie Hour, and that all starts at 8 p.m. Eastern. On the weeks where you are seeing Lara on Thursday nights, and on the week that this video premieres at 11 a.m., 12 noon Eastern Time, myself and Ghost Dragons do afternoon talk, and that's what we do. We talk in the afternoon. I know the schedule sounds confusing, but on Friday nights, I almost forgot, Friday nights at midnight, you will find Midnight Vibes Conversations with the Ghost Dragon, and he's also going to be doing a Saturday night stream too. I will try to put the channel schedule in the description box, because when I explain it, like in my head, it sounds really good, and when I say it out loud to you guys, like in the live stream or something like that, it sounds like it's reasonable, but when I'm trying to sputter it out at the end of the video, it always sounds so confusing. So guys, do you want me to cover the Mandela effect? Let me know. And please let me know what you all think about my opinions, my theories that I've put out throughout this video. But also let me know what yours are, all of the different ones. I want to hear all of the things. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. If nobody's told you today you're beautiful, you're amazing, you are capable, you can do anything that you want to do and be anything that you want to be. Manifest it. Blessing, abundance, miracles. They are our birthright as human beings, and life is meant to be lived to the best of our ability to learn as much as we can and move forward. Stop staying stuck with and in situations with people that are dead, done, over with, stuck, stale, stagnant. I say no more. I believe in you. You are beautiful and perfectly made just the way you are. And if you ever need anything, hit me up, GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. You can ask the people that know me, my tribe, my Wednesday night crew, and they will tell you that I don't just say that because I like the way it sounds. I really am here, and I'll help in any way that I can. I also do spirituality sessions over the course of 6 weeks. Hit me up if you want to know about any of the services that I offer. I'm just getting started, but I feel like I'm doing really well, and I am ready to help you guys and help the collective. With that being said, always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.